He was a thin, old man dressed in a black jacket faded from too many washes, with a white undershirt typical of rural men underneath. His feet were clad in thin-soled black cloth shoes. His hair, seemingly unwashed for days, was greasy and covered in dust. He carried a large bag on his back, his spine hunched, and spoke in a low, hoarse voice. He said his name was Rong and that he had cancer and needed to be hospitalized. The young nurse at the nurse's station was momentarily stunned before she responded, "Oh, sir, you need to go downstairs to get admitted." That day, Lu Wanqing was doing her routine rounds. As she passed the nurse's station, she immediately noticed Mr. Wang. She said something to Dr. Li, who was with her, and then walked over. "Sir, which hospital did you get your examination at? Can I see your medical record?" As she approached, Wanqing realized how emaciated he was, with barely any flesh on his face, looking pale and gaunt. Mr. Wang shakily took out his medical record and handed it to her. Inside, there were several loose sheets of paper. It was a diagnosis from a small hospital. Wanqing looked through it. It was lung cancer, late stage. She glanced up at Mr. Wang, noticing his severe thinness, and felt a pang of pity. Maybe the small hospital had made a mistake? Let's do another checkup. After a more comprehensive and formal examination, the result was still the same: late-stage lung cancer. Wanqing reviewed the test results repeatedly, her brow furrowed slightly. Mr. Wang, however, was smiling. "Doctor, it's cancer, right? Don't worry. Cooperate with our treatment, and you'll get better," Wanqing said, signing the diagnosis sheet and handing it to him. "Did your family come with you? Ask them to go downstairs to complete the admission procedures." No need. I can do it by myself." The air in the hospital always carried a faint smell of disinfectant. Though Wanqing studied medicine, she initially disliked this smell when she started working. This subtle scent seemed to carry the pain of countless patients, reminding her with every breath of life's fragility and difficulty. It was almost 1 p.m. now. After having lunch in the canteen, she came back upstairs. Stepping out of the elevator and turning a corner, she found herself in the corridor. A few steps further, she would reach her office. However, she suddenly stopped, staring fixedly ahead, her dark pupils reflecting Mr. Wang's figure. He was sitting on a bed in the corridor, his back slightly hunched, one hand hooked up to an drip, and the other pulling a bag of bread from his black bag, slowly gnawing at it. Severe lung cancer patients often experience constant nausea and vomiting. By late stages, they can usually only consume soft, liquid foods. But the bread in his hand looked so hard, each swallow accompanied by uncontrollable dry heaves. She pressed her lips together, suddenly reminded of her grandfather, who had also died of cancer, growing increasingly thin and with his once straight back gradually bending. A colleague who had followed her asked curiously, "What's wrong?" She smiled. "Nothing, you go ahead. I have something to do." Her colleagues continued chatting as they entered the office. Wanqing frowned and walked towards Mr. Wang. "Sir, you can't eat this. It's bad for your health." She snatched the bread from his hand. "I arranged a room for you. Why are you staying here? What difference does it make? I've eaten tree bark when I was poor." Mr. Wang looked up, clearly recognizing her, and smiled sheepishly. "The double room is expensive. I don't want to waste money on it. It's unnecessary." After the new inpatient building was constructed, there were few multi-bedrooms left. Only 2 8-bedrooms remained on each floor. The double room originally assigned to Mr. Wang was sunny, but he stubbornly refused to stay after just one glance. Wanqing remained silent for a moment. She had been a doctor for nearly 5 years and had seen many patients reluctant to stay in better rooms due to the high costs. There wasn't much more she could say. She called a nearby porridge shop to order some porridge. "You can't eat these bread and other things anymore. I'm your attending doctor. You must listen to me, okay?" As she spoke, she noticed the large black bag at the foot of the bed, filled with a mess of items: towels, a toothbrush, a wash basin, clothes. Some had already been taken out and placed neatly. Others were still piled inside. "Sir, why did you come alone for hospitalization? Where is your family?" Mr. Wang was stunned for a moment. His cloudy eyes flickered, revealing an expression Wanqing couldn't understand. Gone, all gone. Only I'm left. The next day, Wanqing managed to persuade a nearly recovered patient to be discharged and arranged for Mr. Wang to stay in an 8-bed ward. Wanqing always paid extra attention to Mr. Wang, perhaps because of her grandfather. Her grandfather had also died of lung cancer at this age. Her grandfather's death was the main reason Wanqing chose to become a doctor. In her childhood memories, the image of her grandfather's thin and pained face repeatedly appeared. Back then, she had decided she wanted to become a doctor to heal those tortured by illness. However, after starting her career, she realized that even doctors couldn't save every patient. She witnessed death and separation time and time again. Mr. Wang's presence only intensified her sense of helplessness. Late-stage lung cancer patients are hard to cure, and Mr. Wang was too old to endure intensive treatments. In such a large hospital, where countless people came and went daily, Mr. Wang was quite ordinary. He was an odd man, coming alone to be hospitalized and handling everything by himself. He was very frugal, eating simple meals every day. No one had seen him depressed. Every time Wanqing did her rounds, he was smiling. His mental state was remarkably good for a late-stage cancer patient. Sometimes, a few curious nurses would talk about him, speculating about his story. But all these were just guesses. No one knew where he came from or what he had been through. Over time, people stopped paying attention. After all, the hospital was never short of patients and stories. Time passed quickly, and it was Mid-Autumn Festival again. This year, the weather was bad. It was gloomy in the morning and started raining in the afternoon. Because of the holiday, the hospital was much quieter. Those who could go home went to reunite with their families. Even patients who couldn't be discharged were eating mooncakes and chatting with their families. Wanqing was the doctor on duty. After dinner, she began her rounds as usual. When she got to Mr. Wang's ward, she found him missing. He's been out for a while, an elderly lady in the same ward said while watching TV and eating mooncakes. Wanqing left the ward and searched the entire corridor, but Mr. Wang was nowhere to be seen. Frowning, she was about to call the male doctor on duty downstairs to check the bathroom when she noticed the stairwell door was slightly ajar and a faint smell wafted out. The smell was barely noticeable, but it seemed like smoke. Cancer patients were mostly on the 12th floor, and because the floor was high, the stairwell was rarely used. The gray-white door looked dusty. Who could be smoking inside? She took a few steps closer and pushed the door open. Mr. Wang was sitting on the steps in a striped hospital gown, with the old jacket he wore when he was admitted draped over his shoulders. He was looking down, smoking a cigarette, his withered hand trembling, making him look very lonely under the dim light. "Mr. Wang, what are you doing?" Wanqing felt a surge of anger and immediately bent down to snatch the cigarette from him. "How can you smoke? Don't you care about your life?" Caught smoking, Mr. Wang rubbed his hands nervously. "I'm sorry, Dr. Flu. I wasn't feeling well." Wanqing was stunned, suddenly remembering that every family was celebrating the festival, while Mr. Wang was alone in this cold hospital. She felt a pang of sadness, barely managing to keep a stern face. "You still can't smoke. Your health can't handle it. Don't do it again." Mr. Wang repeatedly agreed. Okay. Wanqing's expression finally softened. She sat down next to Mr. Wang. "Mr. Wang, are you homesick?" She reached into the pocket of her white coat and pulled out a small lotus seed paste mooncake, handing it to him. "Happy Mid-Autumn Festival." Mr. Wang stared at the mooncake in his hand for a long time before murmuring, Happy Mid-Autumn Festival." He unwrapped it and took a big bite. The soft, sweet taste spread in his mouth. As he chewed, he suddenly started to cry, first with muffled sobs and then with loud wails. The old man in his 60s was now crying like a child. Wanqing was startled. What's wrong? He continued crying, tears streaming down his face, sorrowfully muttering in his local dialect, "It's been 19 years. 19 whole years." Mr. Wang was a native of Huqing, living in the countryside. He had 3 children and was the second eldest. In his youth, he served in the army and, after being discharged, married a beautiful girl from a neighboring village named Maisie. Since his elder son became a son-in-law to another family, it fell upon Mr. Wong to take care of his elderly mother. His mother was a harsh woman. Having been tormented by her own mother-in-law all her life, she vented all her resentment and dissatisfaction on her daughter-in-law. Maisie suffered greatly after the marriage, and Mr. Wong was caught between his mother and his wife. Every time he saw Maisie being mistreated, he felt heart-wrenching pain, but he couldn't show his pity. If he defended Maisie, his mother would only torment her more. Only in the quiet of night would he silently hold his wife and repeatedly whisper, "I'm sorry." Each time, Maisie would smile and say, "It's okay. Marrying you is the best decision I've ever made. I don't feel bitter. Life will get better." They lived like this for several years. They were poor then, relying solely on Mr. Wong's income. Maisie, feeling sorry for him, took on all the farm work herself, which eventually took a toll on her health, causing her to be childless for a long time. After his mother passed away, their house was scheduled for demolition, and they were given a new house and compensation. It was said that good things come in pairs, and Maisie, who had been infertile for years, finally became pregnant. After 10 months, she gave birth to a lovely boy. Life seemed to be looking up. On the day they moved into their new house, Mr. Wong held Maisie and the baby, tears welling up in his eyes. He said, "These years have been hard on you." He had never done anything wrong in his life, just wanting to live peacefully, hoping to see his son marry and have children when he was old. That would have made his life worthwhile. But misfortune often strikes when you are happiest. When their son was 6, the village's fish pond hadn't been demolished yet. As usual, Maisie took their son and the villagers to the pond to pick water chestnuts. They used a wooden chestnut barrel, which was common in the water village and often used by villagers to pick water chestnuts. Mr. Wong said it was a sunny day. His son, being playful, fell out of the barrel into the river when no one was looking. Maisie panicked and tried to save him, but the barrel capsized and both mother and son fell into the water. When the villagers rescued them, Maisie had already stopped breathing, still holding her son in a semi-lifted position. The boy coughed up some water, soaking wet and crying loudly. Someone called the police, and the boy was taken away by an ambulance. When Mr. Wong arrived at the hospital, all he could hear was his son's heart-wrenching cries from the emergency room. The nurse said there was water in his lungs and they needed to perform a puncture drainage. He stood there, numb and cold, his thoughts in disarray as his son's cries grew weaker. He seemed to hear the doctor's frantic shouts inside. His wife had drowned, and his son died from a medical mishap during treatment. A whole family was destroyed in a single day. He never understood why this happened. If he had done something wrong, he could accept it, but he had been a good man all his life. He had served his country, dedicated his youth, treated his mother kindly, and always helped his neighbors. Why did misfortune befall him? Why did he have to lose his wife and son in middle age? It's been 19 years. His wife and son have been gone for 19 years. Mr. Wong never remarried, always telling others that he had only one wife and one son in his life. That night, Wan Qing sat on the stairs with Mr. Wong, talking for a long time. It took her several hours to learn everything about him, but his story spanned more than half a lifetime. This path was dark and thorny, and as he walked, he left both skin and flesh on the merciless thorns. Wan Qing thought that was the entire story, but she had forgotten about the brothers and sisters mentioned at the beginning. Besides his wife and son, Mr. Wong did have other relatives. He had a nephew, the son of his late elder brother Wang Genxin, who was mentally challenged, and a younger sister named Wang Undi. Wan Qing met Wang Undi on a Monday. After finishing her work in the outpatient department, she hadn't had a chance to eat, so she bought some appetizing porridge to bring to Mr. Wong. Before she reached the door, she heard a commotion. A woman was speaking. "Brother, just give me the property deed. Are you planning to take it to the grave with you? Your niece and nephew are living hard lives. Please have some pity on us. We are family. Who else are you going to give your money to?" Mr. Wong's voice was wheezy, accompanied by suppressed coughing. You already took the bank book from home. What more do you want? You still have 2 houses. The woman started yelling shrilly. The money in the bank book is nothing compared to the value of the houses. Brother, I'm asking you nicely. Just give me the house, and I'll make sure to take care of your funeral arrangements. Wanqing's heart ached. Mr. Wong had been in the hospital for almost 2 months, yet no one had come to visit him. Now, this person came solely for his inheritance, which was truly disheartening. A crowd had gathered outside the ward to watch the drama. Wanqing called the nurse to disperse the onlookers. When she turned back, she saw through the window on the door a woman in a floral t-shirt standing by the bed. It was Mr. Wong's sister, Wong Undi. With one hand on her hip, she kept talking. Brother, you only have me as your sister. If I don't handle your funeral, you'll end up a lonely ghost. Mr. Wong was half lying down, his deeply wrinkled face full of helplessness and bitterness. I'm not dead yet. What's your rush? I'll give you my belongings eventually. I can give you the house, but the smaller one should go to Offing. He's the only child of our elder brother, and he's not in good mental shape. I thought it would be good to leave him a house, so his life won't be too difficult in the future. Before Mr. Wong could finish, Wong Undi interrupted. No way. Why leave anything for that fool? Besides, our elder brother became a son-in-law to another family and is no longer part of our Wong family. Why should we leave them any inheritance? Wong Undi, one shouldn't be so heartless. Mr. Wong was clearly angry, his hand trembling as he pointed at his sister. I'll say this now. If you don't agree, you won't get anything. Heartless? Brother, you've been a good person all your life, but have you ever had a good day? Wong Undi laughed sarcastically. Even if you don't give it to me now, I'll find a way to get it. Not a single penny will go to Offing. With that, she grabbed her bag and stormed out. As she left, Wanqing finally saw her face clearly. She had taken good care of herself and didn't look old. Her features still showed traces of her youthful beauty, but Wanqing felt she was the ugliest person she had ever seen. After the commotion, the 8-person ward fell into a heavy silence. Everyone exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of curiosity and sympathy. Mr. Wong pulled the quilt up to his stomach and then covered his mouth with a tissue, starting to cough slowly but then more violently, one bout after another, his face gradually turning red. He lay curled up on the bed, the illness having tormented him for so long. He was emaciated, and seeing him huddled and coughing so painfully was heart-wrenching. Wanqing stepped in, placing a hand on his back to soothe him, but the coughing wouldn't stop. Gradually, blood started to seep through the tissue, spilling from between his fingers. The veins on his gaunt, blackened hands bulged, his whole body shivering from the pain. The coughing mixed with pained whimpers, and his face was almost deathly pale. Xiaochun, Xiaochun, prepare for emergency treatment. Wanqing snapped back to reality and shouted towards the door. The other patients in the ward were scared, watching silently. After the emergency treatment, Wanqing was drenched in sweat, her clothes soaked through. Mr. Wong finally stopped coughing, the pain subsiding slightly, but his body was still trembling. He stared blankly at the ceiling, muttering something. Wanqing bent closer to hear, and he kept repeating, Maisie, I'm coming to find you. Wanqing couldn't hold back her tears any longer, a drop falling suddenly. She grasped Mr. Wong's hand. Mr. Wong, it will be okay. Don't give up. Late-stage lung cancer patients suffer immensely. Some even die from the sheer pain. Watching Mr. Wong, Wanqing felt profoundly sad. Such a kind old man shouldn't have to die like this. Dr. Liu. Mr. Wong slowly recovered, shakily handing Wanqing a piece of paper. Help me hide this. Don't let them find it. Wanqing looked down to find a bank statement in her hand, showing a significant amount of money. This is my wife and son's compensation. He spoke haltingly, his voice terribly hoarse. Wanqing had to lean in to hear him clearly. That's my sister. Who else can I give the house to? But this money can't go to them. It's my wife and son's lives. I can't let those heartless people have it. I just can't bear it. Wanqing was silent, her eyes wet, her vision blurred with tears. Mr. Wong wasn't poor, he simply couldn't bear to part with the compensation from his wife and son. The two houses had been their home, he couldn't bring himself to sell them. He preferred to live in poverty rather than start a new family as a form of self-punishment, a way to honor his wife and son. Even after all these years, he hadn't forgotten them or the hard days they had endured together. Donate it to those underprivileged children. Let them learn to swim. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He seemed to be reliving that darkest memory, his face contorted in pain. If they learn to swim, they won't die. Mr. Wong passed away in the evening, 6 days later. The severe pain gave him no peace even in his final moments. Wanqing had just gotten home from work when she received the call. She rushed back to the hospital without even stepping inside her house. The resuscitation had already ended. At 6:05 p.m., another life had ended. Wanqing's hands grew cold as she walked past the doctors and nurses to enter the room. Mr. Wong lay there quietly, his eyes closed. The only signs of his immense suffering were his twisted fingers and the torn bed sheets. She wanted to hold his hand, but sudden, hurried footsteps from outside interrupted her, and she was shoved aside. "My brother's dead? That old bastard. I haven't even found the deed yet." A woman's sharp, cutting voice rang out. Wanqing looked up and saw Wang Undi's still youthful face, twisted in a sneer. She stared at Mr. Wong as if he were her greatest enemy. Beside her were an older man and two younger people, presumably her husband and children. How could Uncle just die like that? What about the house? "Mom, you said we'd get the house for my wedding," the younger man shouted. "All right, calm down." Wang Undi's husband scolded their younger son. "Maybe it's on him." The family started rummaging through Mr. Wong's belongings without any regard for decorum. The doctors and nurses stood by, shocked and whispering among themselves, but no one intervened since it was a family matter. Mr. Wong was wearing his hospital gown underneath his usual faded black jacket. They searched him thoroughly, quickly removing the jacket. Finally, in the inner pocket, Wang Undi found the coveted deed. The family's faces lit up with joy, chatting excitedly, devoid of any sorrow for their lost relative. Wanqing stood there for a long time, watching the grotesque scene unfold like a farce. A whirlwind of emotions stormed within her, but she found no outlet for them. She suddenly recalled the day her grandfather had passed. Their whole family had stayed by his bedside. Her mother had cried until she fainted several times. Even her usually stoic father had shed silent tears, and she had clung to her grandfather, weeping incessantly. The memory of that day and the current scene overlapped in her mind. Her nose stung, her eyes welled up, and she slowly walked out of the ward. In the long corridor, people moved back and forth. She stood aimlessly at the door, staring at the rows of adjacent wards. It felt like each room was a bottomless black hole waiting to swallow lives. What truly pushed patients into these voids wasn't just terminal illness, but the cruelty of human nature. A long time later, many underprivileged schools in Huqing received donations that allowed their students to learn how to swim. Wanqing often visited these schools, watching the children swim in the pool, their young faces beaming with joy and innocence. During these visits, she couldn't help but think of that thin, kind, and lovable old man. Although his life was marred by suffering, he lived with a clear conscience, having done right by his family, his country, and his own heart. She hoped that in heaven, there would be no pain, no separation, and no cruel human hearts, that he would be eternally happy with his beloved wife and son.